Hey everybody, just doing a quick follow-up here after day 4 stream of creating our wonderful trading bot, Trade Me Up. Pretty soon here we're going to get into actually swing trading Tesla. Hopefully it'll be able to beat the market and beat what we'll be able to do just by buying and holding Tesla as a comparison. As a recap here, I will go through some of the changes that we were able to make today in our progress. So first off, I have made some updates to the initial design thoughts file that we had. I moved some of the things that were outstanding below the ones that were completed. So all the ones up top with an X were previously completed, and these should be the things that we have remaining to actually get this thing going. Today we worked on creating a reusable strategy framework or implementation. With that, we in the runtime added a base strategy. So this is kind of just a abstract class that needs to be implemented or inherited to actually be implemented. On top of that, we created an I strategy. So this just declares what bare minimum a strategy should have in our framework. So the subscriptions property here is just an idea behind creating a list of tickers or symbols that will be required by the strategy when it's implemented. I'm thinking that will cut down on some of the data that is injected into each of the strategies. So each of the strategy should only act on the symbols that it needs or it's looking for. If it's looking for all of them, yeah, it would just act on all of them, or all the ones available from alpaca, that can be traded. But otherwise, it will be able to be filtered down and only have data come in for that particular strategy. So the implementation for that, for our Tesla swing trading strategy is here. We created a class, we inherit base strategy, and we just implement the initialize and override that are required. And then we just add Tesla as a required ticker for subscriptions. So outside of that, now that we have a sort of very basic strategy framework, we're not doing any processing. We don't have any indicators. We don't have any state data that we can reference. We don't know if we're invested or not. There's a lot to do here in terms of framework for the strategy, but I needed something to start with so we can actually start handling the loading of strategies and then also subscribing to data streams for those strategies. So once we get that data coming in, then we can start looking into how we're going to actually handle it in the strategy and creating indicators that we can track, like moving averages or RSI or rate of change percentage. So those type of things will come probably in the next couple of days as we get further into the framework itself for a strategy. On top of what we completed here that I've showed you, like I said, I did implement a loading framework for strategies themselves. So I created another class, just a helper class. So this has a few methods in here, the main one being load strategies. So this is going to be called from our run manager initialize. So when we initialize, we're going to load our strategies. And I created two helper functions here, or I'm sorry, methods that basically just reflect on our current assembly, get anything that is actually implementing iStrategy, which should only be strategies that we implement because base strategy again is abstract. So anything that is implementing iStrategy will then be parsed out and returned, and we'll actually get the names of those, right? So from here, once we have the names, we'll start looping through all the ones that we specify in our config. So if you remember back in a previous stream that I had, I went over the config that we're loading. So if we flip over here to an example, in here it's a JSON config. We have strategies as an array. So the end game is for us to have a list of strategies that we can load, and we can actually fill out our runtime here with a bunch of different strategies. So we can do, swing trade Tesla. We can be doing some other, intraday day trading strategy or something like that in the future. But right now we're going to keep it simple, do something basic. We will only have one strategy. So to load this, I would just plug in here Tsla swing trade. And since that matches the one that we implemented here, that's all we have to do. It will load that strategy with our strategy loading mechanism that we added here. So it'll loop through, it'll load those, and then as it's loading them, it's actually going to call the initialize. So as I mentioned before, we have an initialize that must be overridden after being inherited. And that's where you kind of implement your subscriptions. You also can start subscribing to indicator updates. So like if we want to have a daily moving average of Tesla, we would create that here and save the object so we can then reference it later when we're actually trying to make trades when data starts coming in. So we can reference that moving average with some state data. So that's to come later. Once we do that, we are running an async task here. So the idea with that is that we will be loading, potentially a couple strategy, 3, 4, 5 strategies at a time. And some of them may have longer initialization methods that we do run. So we want to just queue them up, run through all of them, and then we'll just wait till they all finish at the end here. So if our strategies are greater than 1, we'll just wait on all those to finish initializing. If there's really nothing going on there, it may just go right away and initialize, and they'll be done by the time it gets to this piece of code anyways. But we wanted to allow that option so we don't synchronously load those if there's a long running operation. We want the ability to just load up the short ones and wait on the longer ones. And this will just output some information here. We also implemented a stop async. So I mentioned before that we needed to have that stop async. So this is one of the places that we'll be using it. And basically this just says, well, if we have no strategies that are provided in our settings, we cannot execute, and we will just run stop async. And basically all that is doing now is potentially in the future we might want to liquidate if we're stopping all of our positions. If not, we'll just leave that for now. Definitely want to try to disconnect if we're connected. And then we'll start disposing of all these objects and then shut down our scheduler. So in our start async, I'll show you what that looks like now. We definitely do our initialize and we wait on that. And that's loading strategies. And then before we had the start scheduler, we finished that last time. And then we're going to keep this open basically until we stop the scheduler, which is our last operation here on the shutdown for the scheduler. Tomorrow we are going to continue, and we have to start implementing a way to subscribe to these minute channels. Like I said before, when we're subscribing in our connection helper, Tesla is hard-coded here. We don't want that. We want to be able to only subscribe to tickers or symbols that the strategies themselves are requesting subscriptions for. I'm trying to update my progress daily, so I'll be streaming this probably about 7 p.m. tomorrow. I'm also uploading all the code to GitHub. You can find the link in the description. Thanks again for watching. Please do subscribe if you want to catch me going live next time.